This guy's name is John Ling. He had neglected his life for a long time and had been locking himself in his room. John Ling opened a rusty iron box and found an old phone. At this moment, a creditor named Ying Xing rushed into his room to demand money. John Ling pretended to call the editor-in-chief to pay him quickly. Then he deferred the payment until next month, but Ying Xing asked him to call the editor-in-chief back. John Ling had no choice but to randomly dial a strange number. But, unexpectedly, he heard a familiar voice on the other end of the line. She was the girl he could never forget in his life. Suddenly, Ying Xing snatched the phone and urged the editor-in-chief to pay John Ling quickly. But on the other end of the line was a high school girl named An Zhen. She thought the call was a scam, so she hung up, but unexpectedly, the other party called back. At this moment, the dormitory manager came to take attendance. John Ling heard An Zhen and immediately remembered that it was the person he was looking for and introduced herself as John Ling. But An Zhen didn't know him, so she hung up. The next day, at school, Lu Yaru, the homeroom teacher, introduced a new student named John Ling. An Zhen suddenly remembered the call last night and realized that the person on the other end was also John Ling. He called again at this time, so she suspected that her new friend was teasing her. Suddenly, Lu Yaru took away her phone and punished An Zhen for not paying. Tension in class. She waited until recess to ask John Ling for his crime. However, her best friend Chu Qian prevented anyone from approaching the person she liked. After meeting John Ling after school, An Zhen called to catch her red-handed. He questioned how she knew his phone number, and An Zhen said that it was John Ling who called her first. At this moment, the sky suddenly became stormy and John Ling called again. However, the person on the other end of the line was not John Ling, who was standing in front of her. An Zhen was scared and asked John Ling to listen to the voice that sounded exactly like him, but John Ling only heard a piercing sound. He thought she was paranoid and left first. Afterwards, An Zhen went to see the physics teacher and asked about the time travel call. She raised many questions, but the teacher said he could understand everything and hung the photo on the wall. Back at the dormitory, An Zhen received another call. The person on the other end of the line officially introduced herself as John Ling from 2024. He had heard An Zhen's name in the dormitory and guessed that she was living in 2012. John Ling from the future told some events in 2012 to prove what he said, especially one that was about to happen. The whole next morning, An Zhen was anxious to verify the truth. She waited until the clock struck 12 noon before rushing down to the cafeteria and saw a bespectacled boy named Xiao Shi buying food from outside. He was like all the students here. He was sick of the tomato scrambled eggs on the daily menu. However, the overbearing chef threw Xiao Shi's food on the ground. Xiao Shi immediately smeared ketchup on his face and incited his classmates to resist oppression. Xiao Shi wanted to prove his ability to Chu Qian. He even threw tomatoes at the principal's face. And Zhen did not expect that the scene before her eyes was exactly like John Ling's words from the future. After his reckless actions in the cafeteria, the school gave Xiao Shi a warning. But from now on, 12th graders could voluntarily register to eat at school. The result was still, as John Ling from the future had said. In her dream, An Zhen found herself entering a dark room and seeing a man intently studying something. It was John Ling from 2024. An Zhen woke up and went downstairs with her father to watch the American professional basketball tournament. She remembered John Ling from the future saying that the famous player Kobe had his nose broken, and as expected, everything happened exactly as expected. On the way to school, An Zhen heard thunder and asked her father to stop the car at the intersection ahead so she could go to school by herself. But An Zhen ran into a grocery store to call John Ling from 2024. She called him John Ling from the future and admitted that she believed what he said. He said that he had published a book but had been cheated out of all his money. Zhang Ling from the future asked An Zhen to help him in 2012 buy a lottery ticket to deposit in the bank. Zhang Ling would take the money to pay off the fact debt and give An Zhen whatever was left. She immediately agreed but wanted to know if she would be happy in the future. Jian Ling from the future agreed and read the number to An Zhen. He revealed that he loved to eat noodles in the past, which she could use to approach Jian Ling in 2012. After school, An Zhen ran to a famous noodle shop about 2 kilometers away from school. She waited in line for a long time before getting her turn, but unexpectedly, the owner announced that the noodle shop was sold out. An Zhen returned to class feeling sad because she had spent the whole afternoon still not being able to buy a bowl of noodles for Jian Ling. An Zhen stared at him, causing her 2 best friends to misunderstand that she had a crush on him. An Zhen did not give up and finally bought Jian Ling's favorite dish. She returned to class to invite Jian Ling to eat noodles, but he only ate the marshmallows on the table. An Zhen suddenly remembered that there were 2 noodle shops in that area. She guessed that Jian Ling liked the shop next door better. So she went to line up again, and excitedly brought noodles back to invite him. Unexpectedly, John Ling bought them first, and even ate them in front of her. An looked at the class monitor studying hard, and had no choice but to invite him to eat. When she returned to the dormitory, she saw that the sky was stormy, and Jen immediately went out to answer the phone call from John Ling from the future. She blamed him for not understanding herself, which was why she wasted her whole day. John Ling from the future revealed that the bookstore on Wan Hong Street had a book he really liked. Unexpectedly, Chu Qian heard the conversation between the two behind the door. She followed An out, but was caught by the security guard, so he dragged Chu Qian back to the dormitory. And Jen went to the bookstore and finally found an ancient book among the pile of old books. She placed the book on John Ling's table and secretly looked at him from behind. Jen declared that only she had these two books of literature in the entire city. John Ling wanted to buy it back, but Jen said she treated money like trash. She said she just wanted to be friends and hoped he would accept her kindness. John Ling interrupted Jen with money and agreed to be her friend. Jen took the money to buy him noodles. For the first time, John Ling took his friend to a familiar noodle shop. The owner praised him for being both kind and enthusiastic, and Jen found John Ling more and more different from his appearance. He liked to read literature instead of martial arts comics, and Jen revealed that she had discovered his interests thanks to a call from the future. So she had John Ling's phone number before he transferred to her class. And Jen said that John Ling of 2024 was cheated out of all his money, so he asked her to take John Ling of 2012 to buy a lottery ticket to change his life. After that, Jen dragged John Ling to the lottery shop and gave him a ticket. She planned to donate a part of it and help her father develop the company. And Jen remembered that John Ling from the future asked her to remind John Ling to pay the electricity bill. She said that John Ling of 2024 also told her whether he would be happy in the future. John Ling did not believe it, nor did he expect anything from the future, because he had a past full of trauma. John Ling's mother passed away, and his father sent his child to his wife's sister to raise. The father always promised to come back to see his child, but never did. And Jen believed that as long as the future was in her hands, everything could change. When Jen returned to the dormitory, Chu Qian said bluntly that she liked John Ling. If Jen still wanted to be friends with her, then she should not get close to John Ling anymore. And Jen sighed and secretly blamed him for having many people who liked him. The next day, in class, Chu Qian took the initiative to talk to John Ling, but he avoided her and quietly left. Chu Qian secretly read the article in her desk drawer and suspected that John Ling liked Jen. When she met Jen, she immediately asked if John Ling liked her. Jen thought that if John Ling was moved, she would definitely like the beautiful Chu Qian. When she heard that, she asked her best friend to invite John Ling to dinner so that he could get to know Chu Qian better. As soon as she met John Ling, Jen asked about the lottery ticket. Unexpectedly, he had crumpled it and left it in his pocket. She told John Ling not to lose the ticket, and Jen offered to invite him to dinner. But when he heard that Chu Qian was also at the dinner, he immediately refused. Even so, John Ling still had to agree to Jen's pleas. At the noodle shop, Chu Qian kept staring at Jiang Ling. Seeing that he was always alone, Jen wanted to introduce him to more friends, but Jiang Ling acted like he didn't need them and even moved to another table. At this time, Chu Qian was angry and thought that Jen had stolen the person she liked. The next day, the whole class passed around the article about Jen. She clarified that she was not the character in this confession. When he got home, Jiang Ling heard that his aunt had paid the electricity bill. He told her to separate the power lines to avoid tripping the circuit breaker, but the miracle seemed impossible. Suddenly the power went out, causing Jiang Ling's aunt to slip and fall to the ground. On the other side, Jen checked the lottery results and found out that she had not won. She waited for the rain to stop so she could call Jiang Ling from the future, but at this point he knew that he could not change the past. Jiang Ling from the future decided to reincarnate. He apologized to Jen because he could not save her, and she could not change Jiang Ling's life. He said that the two of them would have no future because before the college entrance exam, Jen would no longer be there. After that, Jiang Ling said goodbye to her and hung up. When she got home, Jen hugged her mother tightly in fear. Now she wanted to eat as much of her mother's cooking as possible and did not want to leave her family. However, Jiang Ling from the future said that she only had 100 days left to live. In her dream, Jen found herself falling into an endless space. She woke up with a start and went downstairs to see her father reading the newspaper. Jen wished that her father would go on fewer business trips so that he could spend more time with her and her mother. On the way to school, she reminded her father to drive slowly, and Jen wanted to avoid all dangers before the college entrance exam. Because John Ling from the future did not reveal the cause of Anjen's death, she always felt scared everything. The class monitor, named Gu Ming, told Anjen to quickly gather at the stadium. There, he read the oath of seniors on behalf of the 12th grade. Anjen did not see John Ling go down to the stadium. He was absent during the entire class. When she met the class monitor in the cafeteria, Anjen approached him and asked if he knew where John Ling went. Gu Ming thought that they were about to take the college entrance exam, so she needed to work hard for her future. But Anjen thought that she had no future. She ran to the back of the school to look for Jian Ling but could not find him. Anjen thought that Jian Ling from the future had reincarnated, so the Jian Ling of 2012 had also disappeared. During the test, Jian Ling suddenly appeared. She waited until the end of class to ask where Jian Ling had gone. He said that his aunt had fallen and broken her back, so Jian Ling had to take care of her in the hospital. He began to believe what Anjen said about the call from the future. Jian Ling wanted to know if his aunt had recovered and if his father had come back to find him. Anjen had to make up a lie that Jian Ling would become a successful writer, and at the same time, she revealed that she would die. Then, Anjen invited him to dinner so that Jian Ling could save money for the future. Jian Ling advised her not to believe in an unknown phone call too much. Instead, Anjen should live a happier life. She looked at Jian Ling sadly and said that she wanted the two of them to have a future. Then Anjen took him out to eat delicious food. She told Jian Ling that she still had many things she wanted to do, such as raising a cat or going to Disney. Jian Ling promised to take her photo with him to travel everywhere. Anjen told him that no matter what happened, Jian Ling had to live to fulfill his dream of becoming a great writer. At this time, in 2024, Jian Ling from the future woke up in a daze. Unexpectedly, Yingxing was sitting in front of him, eating noodles. In fact, they dragged him downstairs. Yingxing also prepared a car for Jian Ling so that he could deliver goods to pay off his debt gradually. Although Jian Ling did not reincarnate, he still could start a new life. He coincidentally delivered goods to his old school, so he went there to visit. When Jian Ling passed by his old classroom, a beam of light suddenly shone down. He saw Anjen's back and himself in 2012. At this moment, a thunderstorm broke out, so Jian Ling from the future called the past. He apologized for not being able to contact Anjen for several sunny days. She immediately asked Jian Ling from the future how she died. He sadly replied that he did not know the specifics and only heard that Anjen died in school. She wondered if she had an accident or was framed. Anjen knew that the two time periods could not influence each other, so she hoped that Jian Ling from the future would help her find the truth. After thinking for a while, he agreed to find a way to save Anjen. At this time, in the classroom, Chu Qian was placing a bottle of milk on Jian Ling's desk. Not long after, Anjen came in to report the news and accidentally dropped a note on the bottle cap. She said that Jian Ling from the future had just called and promised to save her from death, but Anjen did not understand why she had died in the school. She observed for a while and saw that the fan on the ceiling was old. Anjen was afraid that it would fall on her head. At this time, outside the classroom, Chu Qian was very angry when she saw Anjen being close to Jian Ling. When she returned to the dormitory, Anjen saw that Chu Qian ignored her. She also discovered that there was dirt in her water bottle. Anjen was afraid that someone had poisoned her. In the middle of the night, she woke up to drink some water and found a bottle of white powder in Chu Qian's cupboard. Unexpectedly, she stood right behind Anjen. Chu Qian snatched the bottle of powder and went into the bathroom. At this time, Anjen was so scared that she could not sleep anymore. The next day, when she met Jian Ling, Anjen immediately expressed her suspicions. She thought that someone was trying to poison her and felt that Chu Qian was also very strange, but she believed that her best friend would not do such a thing. Anjen wanted to ask Jian Ling from the future to know more, but because it was sunny, she could only call Jian Ling from the present. In 2024, Jian Ling from the future started to investigate Anjen's death. He visited her mother and introduced himself as Anjen's old classmate. The mother did not expect that after 12 years, someone would still remember her daughter. She brought Jian Ling to see Anjen's room. Even though a long time had passed, the room still had her belongings and photos. Later, Jian Ling from the future came to see Chu Qian. She was then working as a dancer at a bar. Jian Ling asked about Anjen. Chu Qian said that she did not remember what had happened more than 10 years ago and did not want to remember the past. At that moment, a customer came to pick her up, so Chu Qian left in a hurry. Jian Ling from the future had to go to the amusement park to meet Anjen's groupmate, Chi Song. He asked his old classmate to help him approach Chu Qian, but Chi Song said that he had not contacted her for a long time. He suggested that Jian Ling go ask his old class monitor for help. Jian Ling had heard some thugs saying rude things about An Zhen and Chu Qian before. He was so angry that he attacked them, and the class monitor came to their rescue. Gu Ming knew that Jian Ling was close to An Zhen, so he hoped that the two of them would help each other pass the university entrance exam. If there was anything they didn't understand, Gu Ming was always willing to help. In another development, when An Zhen returned to the dormitory, she looked at the old photo with Chu Qian. They used to play volleyball together and won. Moreover, Chu Qian always appeared when An Zhen needed her the most. The two of them played together and raised the Here volleyball championship trophy. At this moment, Chu Qian locked her locker and made an appointment to talk to An Zhen tomorrow. Suddenly, a storm broke out, and An Zhen quickly called Jian Ling from the future. She revealed to him that Chu Qian had been acting strangely recently. Coincidentally, Jian Ling from the future had just met Chu Qian and felt that she was hiding something. He didn't know what had happened, but Chu Qian was currently working at a nightclub. He told An Zhen to be on guard against her best friend. Feeling dangerous, An Zhen asked Jiang Ling to teach her martial arts. He reached out and grabbed her collar and showed her each defensive move. An Zhen wanted to learn short moves to quickly defeat her opponent. Jiang Ling taught her to find her thumb and then twist her opponent's arm. An Zhen wanted to learn cooler moves like pushing her opponent to the ground. Jiang Ling taught her to circle her arms and then knock her opponent down. An Zhen practiced but didn't have enough strength to push Jiang Ling. He smiled and pulled her down onto the mattress. The sunlight shone down, making An Zhen shine in Jiang Ling's eyes. He felt embarrassed and made an excuse to go eat noodles. Not long after, Chu Qian made an appointment with An Zhen at a milk tea shop. She asked An Zhen if she was very close to Jiang Ling. She quickly explained that she had only asked him to help with her literature. Chu Qian loudly blamed her best friend for acting with her. It was clear that she was the one who said she liked Jiang Ling first, but An Zhen still kept approaching him. An Zhen insisted that she had a reason to be close to him. Chu Qian also exposed An Zhen's frequent phone calls with Jiang Ling. Moreover, she saw An Zhen throw her notes on the ground with her own eyes. An Zhen didn't know which notes and didn't expect her best friend to think of her like that. She had a lot on her mind, but Chu Qian never wanted to hear it. An Zhen cried loudly and asked if Chu Qian considered An Zhen a friend and how Chu Qian would feel if An Zhen were about to die. She immediately denied it, saying that it had nothing to do with her. An Zhen blamed Chu Qian for being selfish and always thinking of herself. Chu Qian returned the keychain and hoped that An Zhen would disappear from her world. Jian Ling walked over, but An Zhen didn't want to see his. She crossed the street like a lost soul. At this moment, a truck rushed towards An Zhen. Fortunately, Jian Ling pulled her out of the accident in time. An Zhen blamed herself for ignoring her best friend's feelings. Moreover, she also felt that she had said something bad to Chu Qian. An Zhen felt a little regretful when she heard the call from the future. The next day, the class president announced the list of participants in the special selection. Among them, An Zhen's father had signed her up for the 800m run. Jiang Ling also signed up. When he heard that, An Zhen guessed that the reason she died was because she was exhausted after running. Jian Ling suggested that he would train with her. After that, he used his old bicycle to train An Zhen. He always rode beside her to encourage her to run a little more. If An Zhen finished the race, Jian Ling would invite her to eat hot pot for a week, but she gave up halfway. An Zhen blamed Jian Ling for forcing her to run while he was cycling. He then cursed that whoever didn't finish would gain 3 kilograms. She was afraid that the curse would come true, so she quickly ran to the noodle shop. When the two were about to eat, Chu Qian passed by. An Zhen saw her friend talking to the thugs. She wondered if it was because of her that Chu Qian lived a unhappy life in the future. When it started to rain, An Zhen quickly called and asked Jian Ling from the future to help Chu Qian. On the other end of the line, he said that he had just met Chu Qian, and she finally revealed that An Zhen was very close to Gu Ming around the end of 12th grade. An Zhen remembered that she had studied with Gu Ming since middle school, but they had only maintained a normal friendship. Indiana class. Gu Ming wanted to tutor An Zhen. At this moment, Jian Ling came over and called her to the stadium. An Zhen guessed that her father asked Gu Ming to take care of her studies because their families had known each other for a long time. Jian Ling guided An Zhen through the warm-up and then timed her run. He remembered that his aunt used to be an athlete, so Jian Ling asked her to give An Zhen some extra guidance. At the stadium, Chi Song came to practice with An Zhen because he had also signed up for sports recruitment for the university entrance exam. Chi Song's dream was to be an actor, but now he decided not to take the arts exam anymore because his parents had died early. Chi Song could not add more burden to his sister. He did not expect Jian Ling to train An Zhen so well. Chi Song looked at Jian Ling's eyes on An Zhen. He joked, asking if Jian Ling had accidentally fallen for An Zhen. Finally, An Zhen got the time Jian Ling asked for. She celebrated celebrated the victory with him, which inadvertently made Jianling's heart beat faster. Afterwards, Anjen invited everyone to eat hot pot. She thanked Jianling for training her to improve. Anjen hoped that all three of them would get extra points to get into the university they wanted. On the day of the sports competition, Jianling had not seen Anjen come to register. He ran to the dormitory and saw her looking for her entrance exam card. Anjen remembered that she had left her entrance exam card in her jacket pocket and thrown it in the equipment room. But when the two of them found the entrance exam card, unexpectedly, someone had secretly locked her and Jianling in the room. At the same time, Guming had just come back from the bathroom and still hadn't seen Anjen and Jianling. Qisong's older sister was named Qian. She said that she hadn't seen Anjen in the girls' dormitory either. In the gym, Jianling set up a chair to help Anjen climb out. At this moment, the security guard suddenly appeared outside the door. Anjen hugged Jianling's neck in fear. After that, the two of them looked at each other with confused eyes and quickly ran to the school gate. But the sports car convoy had already left. Jianling had no choice but to borrow the noodle shop owner's delivery truck to take Anjen to the test site. On the way, the two of them were suddenly stopped by the police because Jianling was speeding. But in the end, the two of them were escorted to the test site by the police. The men's endurance race started first. Jianling and Qisong had excellently led the group, but Qisong thought it was the 800 mem race, so he stopped in the middle of the track and celebrated. Jianling quickly pulled him to continue running, so the two of them finished last. When it was the women's race, Anjen remembered Jiang Ling's warning from the future. She never knew when something unexpected would happen. Anjen just wanted to do well in her race. She tied her shoelaces tightly and started the race confidently. However, in the middle of the race, her shoelaces suddenly came untied, causing her to fall to the ground. Jianling rushed over in time and hugged Anjen, taking her off the track. He heard Anjen cry out in pain and carried her into the infirmary. In the infirmary, she was looking at him and silently thanking him. At this moment, her parents came to visit, but they only blamed each other for not checking their daughter's shoes. Jianling returned the shoes to Anjen's mother. It was obvious that someone had intentionally cut her shoelaces. In the infirmary, Anjen received a phone call from Jianling from the future. She told him that everything happened as he said, and that danger was getting closer and closer to Anjen. Jianling from the future said that he had just followed Qisong and felt that he was very strange. Anjen wondered if her parents would still be together in the future. Jianling from the future remembered going to Anjen's house the day before, and he didn't see her father there. When she got home, Anjen found a necklace box in her father's bag. She guessed that her father had given it to her mother, so she made them exchange it in front of her. Knowing that Anjen had difficulty walking, Jianling prepared a wheelchair for her. She told him that her father had just bought new shoes and asked Guming to give them to her. So Anjen believed that Guming was not the culprit who harmed her. Seeing Jianling bring Anjen to class, Guming reminded them that they had just arrived late for class and were punished to stand at the back of the class. Jianling asked the class monitor why he didn't see Anjen's injured leg. He refused to listen, but Guming forced them to follow the class rules. At this moment, Lu Yaru entered the classroom and called the two down to the office. At this time, a classmate came to return Qisong's shoes. Anjen discovered that the shoes were exactly the same as his, except for the size. Qisong said that he was proud that his sister bought him a pair of limited edition shoes. On this side, Guming met Jianling privately. He insisted that he absolutely did not harm Anjen. The two had known each other since childhood and grew up together, but after his father's decline and mother's illness, Guming could only focus on studying. He also wondered who had ruined Anjen's shoes. Jianling revealed to the class president that on the day of the exam, he and Anjen had been locked in the school's equipment room. Guming suddenly remembered that when Qisong's sister sent her younger brother off to the exam, she heard that Anjen had not arrived yet and immediately went to the girls' dormitory to look for her. The next day at school, Anjen coincidentally met Qian and Qisong. She discovered that Qian was wearing the same necklace as the one her father bought, while Anjen's mother was wearing a different one. She collapsed into Jianling's wheelchair. On the soccer field, Anjen was like a lost soul. At this moment, a ball flew towards Anjen, but Jianling stopped it in time. After school, Anjen went home early but did not see her mother at home. She returned after a while. She thought her daughter was in the dormitory, so she did not come back early to cook. Anjen wondered where her father was. She replied that her husband was on a business trip to Huangzhou and would be back soon. When her father returned, Anjen asked asked where he was on a business trip. Unexpectedly, he said he was going to Shanghai. Obviously, it did not match what her mother said. Anjen felt extremely disappointed and quietly returned to her room. When it was raining heavily, Anjen called Jianling from the future again. This time, she wanted to know about Chi Song's older sister Future. He remembered that the last time he had followed Chi Song to the kindergarten, it was to pick up his nephew. Anjen suddenly fell silent. She thought her father would marry his mistress. Anjen immediately went to see Jianling. She revealed that her father had been having an affair with Chi Song's sister. Anjen asked Jianling to follow the two of them together. Unexpectedly, Anjen's father went to pick up Qian and took her out to dinner. She remembered that this was her family's favorite restaurant. Anjen cried loudly and told Jianling that she no longer had a family. He carried Anjen on his back and returned to school. Lu Yaru found out that the two of them skipped self-study and called her down to the office. She reminded Anjen not to fall in love early and to focus on her studies. Not long after, she went back to find Chi Song and wondered if his older sister had a boyfriend. Chi Song thought she had a boyfriend, but he had never met that man. Anjen revealed to him that Qian was having an affair with her father and that she had witnessed them being intimate in her family's favorite restaurant. Anjen cried loudly and begged Chi Song to tell his older sister to stop. Chi Song went to Qian and questioned why her sister was destroying someone's house. Qian hoped that her younger brother would believe that she was not a mistress. She promised that after Chi Song finished the college entrance exam, Qian would arrange for her younger brother to meet her boyfriend. During the flag-raising ceremony, Guming saw that Anjen was not standing firmly, so she asked the teacher to take her back to class. In class, she fell asleep for a while, and when she woke up, the new class was already in session. At this time, Guming suddenly panicked because she could not find her classmates' milk money. The PE class monitor remembered that in addition to Guming and Anjen, Chi Song and Chu Qian were also absent from the flag raising. The 4 students were called to the office and the principal personally received them. Chu Qian said she had gone to the dormitory to get her uniform. Chi Song had had a stomachache in the bathroom. Guming had taken Anjen back to the classroom. Everyone had witnesses, so the homeroom teacher had to search the whole class. The security guard found 2 bills with Chu Qian's name on them in Anjen's pencil case. She tried to deny it, but everyone was suspicious. The school then invited the parents to come and find a solution to the matter, and Jen still insisted that she did not steal any money. Her mother asked the school to investigate thoroughly because she always gave her a lot of pocket money, and Jen did not even spend it all, so she certainly would not have stolen money from the class. The principal thought that if they could not find the money, they should report it to the police, and Jen's father wanted to compensate the students first and then continue the investigation in the school. But Anjen objected because her father compensated her, which meant that Anjen was the culprit. Seeing that the other classes were all getting milk, the students in the class immediately blamed Anjen. Not long after, Jianling entered the classroom and offered milk to everyone. Chu Qian stepped forward and advised Jianling to urge Anjen to return the money. Anjen recalled that Chu Qian had also been absent from the training ground, so she told Chu Qian not to act suspicious toward her. Jianling wondered if everyone who had studied with Anjen for 3 years did not understand her true nature. Chi Song, Anjen's close friend, also turned to gossip. The class president also ignored the rumors about his friend. Jianling hoped that everyone would sober up before there was solid evidence. He went out to see Anjen and apologized for not being able to protect her. Anjen felt resentful because she had lost money like everyone else, but she was the only one suspected by her classmates. Jianling comforted Anjen that he would always trust her. She reminded Jianling to stay away from her and not to make himself wronged. After school, Guming made an appointment with Jianling after school. He found nail polish stains on the money bag. Guming remembered that Chu Qian had also painted her nails this morning. When she got home, it was stormy, so Anjen quickly called Jianling from the future. He still remembered the milk money loss incident, and Anjen's father had later paid more than 10,000 yuan, but Jianling from the future suspected that Chi Song had something to do with it. After school, Jianling followed Chu Qian. He encountered a thug blocking the road and forced Chu Qian to give him money. At the noodle shop, the owner returned the change to Jianling. He found Chu Qian's name written on the 10 yuan bill, but the owner couldn't remember who gave it to him. Back in class, Anjen was upset when everyone avoided her. Lu Yaru entered the classroom and asked some friends to bring out milk to distribute to the whole class. Everyone was talking about Anjen's father paying for the milk, which proved that she had stolen the money. Based on the 10 yuan coin, Guming analyzed that Chu Chen probably wouldn't spend the coin with her name on it. Moreover, she hated eating noodles. Guming wanted to ask the boss to stick a 10 10 yuan coin on the counter. He guessed that the culprit lacked psychological insight, which explained why they spent the money so close to the school. If he knew that there was a possibility of being discovered, he would definitely panic. Gu Ming wanted the culprit to reveal himself. When Anjen returned to the dormitory, she saw that her classmates were all avoiding her. They even gathered in the hallway to mock her for stealing. Anjen was desperate and gradually fell into a dark space. When she got home, she immediately blamed her father for paying for the milk for the whole class. Because doing so would be tantamount to admitting that Anjen was the one who stole the money, he advised his daughter to forget about it and focus on her college entrance exams. Anjen's emotions were running high at this point. She blamed her father for not believing her. Anjen thought that he didn't care about her at all, which was why he went on business trips so often. Moreover, she knew that her family was not intact. The next day, the whole class started talking about the 10 yuan bill at the noodle shop. Some people thought that the culprit was not Anjen. While waiting near the noodle shop, Zhang Ling finally caught the suspect. He wrote a letter asking Chi Song to come to the equipment room and questioned him about stealing the milk money. Chi Song admitted that he had stuffed 2 bills into Anjen's pencil case because he was angry that she had framed Chi Yan as a mistress. However, Chi Song did not take the remaining money. Just then, Zhang Ling heard the commotion. Outside, he released Chi Song and ran out of the room. At this moment, Anjen was standing on the roof. Lu Yaru believed Anjen and begged her students not to think of anything, but despair overwhelmed Anjen. The whole class came and believed that Anjen did not steal the milk money. She looked at Zhang Ling and wanted to go to him, but the family breakdown and friendship made Anjen hesitate. Her life, which was originally peaceful, suddenly collapsed in a short time. She remembered Zhang Ling from the future saying that she had no future. Anjen desperately took a step forward. At this moment, Gu Ming also found the money. Zhang Ling hugged Anjen again and saved her once more. After that, Anjen did not go to school anymore. Zhang Ling missed the cheerful girl from that day. While studying or eating noodles, he kept calling her but couldn't reach her. Lu Yaru visited Anjen and brought many cards from her classmates. Everyone missed Anjen and apologized for misunderstanding her. Zhang Ling especially wanted to light up hope for the future with Anjen. In order to improve his daughter's mood, her father packed up and went home and even helped his wife cook. It had been a long time since Anjen felt a bit of family warmth. Her father also bought her a cat named Zhang. Anjen turned on her phone again and received a message from Zhang Ling. He missed the afternoons when he went out and ate noodles with her. Anjen gradually regained her motivation and wanted to return to normal life. She entered the classroom and was welcomed by her classmates. Lu Yaru apologized for letting her students suffer. She hoped that through this incident, the class would have more trust and unity. Anjen looked at Zhang Ling as if silently thanking him. Anjen went to the noodle shop for lunch and coincidentally met Zhang Ling. She was suddenly confused and rushed back to class. Anjen saw a little star on the table and guessed that Zhang Ling had made an appointment with her at Mengui Chang. When Anjen arrived, Zhang Ling had prepared a bag of coins. He wanted to play around the amusement center with her, but she spent almost all her money and still couldn't catch a single bear. At this time, there was a noodle eating challenge. Anjen immediately pushed Zhang Ling to play. She stood outside to cheer and took pictures of him. Then the two of them played the merry-go-round together. It was like healing Zhang Ling's lonely childhood. When he heard Anjen sing, Zhang Ling felt that his world only had the girl in front of him. On the way back, the two of them passed by Zhang Ling's house. Anjen also met Zhang Ling's aunt again. She said that Zhang Ling had been sad all day, but as soon as Anjen arrived, Zhang Ling was much happier. The aunt pushed her to visit Zhang Ling's room. He suddenly felt confused and hurriedly ran after Anjen. She read the manuscript on the paper and praised Zhang Ling for writing very well. Anjen understood why he didn't make friends with his classmates. Zhang Ling admitted that everyone was annoying except Anjen. She felt embarrassed and asked permission to go home first. Before going to bed, Anjen asked Zhang Ling to watch the sunrise. He told her to sleep a little longer and he would wake her up. For the first time in her life, Anjen saw the sunrise. She said that she wanted to be Zhang Ling's editor. Anjen felt that Zhang Ling had changed a lot because he was very difficult to approach at first. Zhang Ling remembered that on the day he entered school, his mood was down. He accidentally picked up Anjen's name tag. Countless novel scripts immediately came to Zhang Ling's mind. Then he went to the prayer tree and accidentally met Anjen again. After studying in the same class, Anjen kept caring for Zhang Ling. He didn't expect that besides her aunt, there would be someone who would buy him noodles. Zhang Ling had rejected Anjen earlier because he wasn't used to socializing with others. But Anjen's appearance and actions every day made Zhang Ling a little grateful. His life gradually became happier. He didn't believe in the time call, but he found that her spirit spirit was getting worse and worse. Jianling began to worry and wanted to help her fight against the injustices in life, but he thought that if the world was just a novel, Jianling had to write another story to change Anjen's life. After that, he felt that Anjen's energy was getting weaker and weaker. If it went out, his life would also return to the days before. Since graduation was approaching, Liu Yaru allowed the students to skip a self-study period to take commemorative photos before leaving school. Anjen sat down next to Jianling. She guessed that many girls would ask to take a photo with him, so she wanted to take the opportunity first, but she didn't know that he only volunteered to keep the memory with Anjen. During the group photo, Anjen was separated from Jianling. Luckily, the photographer let her change her position right in front of him. Anjen stepped up next to Jianling, and at this moment, the students threw a lot of sparkling stars. In 2024, Jianling found himself lost in a memory. He discovered that the past had changed, but Anjen was still dead. Jianling, who came from the future, woke up with a start. At this moment, a storm was brewing, so he called the past, but Jianling didn't let Anjen answer the phone. On this side, Jianling from the future opened the old iron box and found more graduation photos. At this time, in 2012, Jianling brought Anjen to his house. The two of them ate delicious food cooked by his aunt. Seeing that she was quite passionate about eating, he went into the kitchen to cook for Anjen himself. During that time, she kept looking at him, and Anjen promised to eat everything so as not to let him down. When Jianling went to his room, he wanted to persevere in writing a novel, but it might take 10 years to finish. For example, the book The Years in a Hurry, in Anjen's hand, Jianling had written for 17 years. On the way back, Anjen met Chu Qian, who was being bullied. Jianling pulled her back so that he could rush in first. He beat up 2 thugs so that Anjen could save Chu Qian. The police praised Jianling for his good deed and told him not to do such a thing again. Back at the dormitory, Chu Qian burst into tears and thanked Anjen for saving her. Anjen said that Chu Qian would always be a princess and that she would be a knight to protect her best friend. Chu Qian recounted that when she saw Anjen standing on the rooftop, she realized that she was afraid of losing her best friend. Chu Qian apologized to Anjen for always being angry with her. Not long after, she made an appointment with Anjen and Qi Song to go to the wishing tree. Chu Qian hoped that the two best friends would make up. Anjen remembered that today was Qi Song's birthday, so she gave him a book. Qi Song knew that Anjen would come, so he bought a lot of snacks. The group happily celebrated Qi Song's birthday like every year. Chu Qian told Qi Song to be brave and made an excuse that she needed to go out for some fresh air. Qi Song was stuttering and couldn't say anything when Anjen apologized first. She knew that adult matters had nothing to do with Qi Song, but Anjen took her anger out on him. Qi Song was about to admit to the milk money matter. At this moment, Chu Qian returned to celebrate her birthday with everyone. On a rainy night, Anjen received a call from Jianling from the future. She told him that milk money had suddenly appeared in the classroom. He thought that things around Anjen had begun to change. Moreover, their two spaces could not affect each other. Anjen thanked Jianling from the future for helping her get to know Jianling at the age of 18. In her space, although he was cold, he had a warm heart. Jianling helped her overcome her cruel fate. Anjen thanked Jianling from the future and said goodbye. The next day, when she met Jianling at school, Anjen said she had said goodbye to Jianling from the future. She also saved Jianling's name in her phone as her good friend Jian. Jianling invited his friends to his aunt's house for dinner. He personally went into the kitchen to cook and entertain everyone. Anjen secretly glanced at Jianling because he really shined in the kitchen. At this time, Chu Qian had just finished writing a well wishes for Anjen. At this moment, someone came in to distribute flyers advertising college entrance exam insurance. Seeing Jianling attentively writing a novel, Anjen immediately praised him for having the qualities of a great writer. She guessed that the manuscript that had been circulating in class the previous time was also written by Jianling. Anjen was willing to be a reader and wait for the end of the story. Jianling made an excuse that he hadn't finished writing it yet and kept it all at home. Anjen thought that she represented the audience and could give him some suggestions. When she arrived at Jianling's house, Anjen became his first reader. She found it very interesting and even wanted to post it online to get other people's opinions. She especially liked the part where the two characters met again many years later at a ball. They held hands and danced a romantic tango. During the mock exam, Gu Ming asked to hand in his paper half an hour early and then hurried out of class. Anjen felt that Gu Ming was very strange recently. Gu Ming was always busy and didn't even come to evening self-study. When she checked the exam results, Anjen congratulated Jianling for continuing to surpass her. But this time, Qi Song improved by leaps and bounds to 80th place. While the class president dropped to 57th place. In 2024, John Ling from the future, after losing contact with An, devoted herself to writing a novel about her. John Ling suddenly woke up in a strange room. There was also An's watch model inside. He quickly called to receive the delivery order, but Yingxing's phone number changed to a financial company. John Ling was stunned when he saw the novel written by him, and he was surprised to discover that 2 classical literature books still bore the inscription, "Gifted by An." He guessed that his dimension had changed. John Ling from the future suddenly remembered everything that happened in the past, and especially that An was still alive. Jian Ling happily found his phone to call her, but he still couldn't contact An. Jian Ling drove quickly to her house, but the maid said that the owner had gone abroad. He went to look for Qi Song and Chu Qian, but no one knew them. Jian Ling from the future continued to go to school to find Lu Yaru. Now she had become the principal. Lu Yaru seemed to know that Jian Ling would come to see her. He confided that he often dreamed about An recently. Memories suddenly flooded back, making him feel that she was still alive. Lu Yaru thought about Jiang Ling's feelings, but An was really gone. She told him to do what he promised. Then An might appear. In 2012, An wanted to face her family problems. She told her parents to divorce her because she had grown up. Instead of trying to fix things, An hoped that her parents would find their own happiness. Meeting Qian alone, he said goodbye to her. Because after An had an accident, he didn't want to hurt his daughter anymore. Qian realized that she had made the wrong choice, making her feel like a family destroyer. An's father planned to wait until his daughter finished her college entrance exam before talking about divorce, but he didn't expect things to become so serious. Qian knew that An was always #1 in his heart, so she was upset and had locked his daughter in the gym. And it was Qian who had cut An's running shoes. She said that she couldn't continue this relationship anymore. John Ling took her aunt to get her back checked and met Gu Ming paying the hospital bill for his mother. He remembered that Gu Ming's family was poor, but he was holding a lot of money. When Zhang Ling returned to class, he heard An say that the class monitor was constantly absent from self-study. She remembered that she had seen a college entrance exam flyer in Gu Ming's bag, exactly like the one given out at Jian Ling's aunt's restaurant. But Gu Ming was originally a very good student and also studied by himself, so why did his grades drop like that? Zhang Ling went to the address on the flyer and applied for a test preparation class, but the receptionist refused because they did not accept new students. He hired someone to pretend to be his father and went there again. The receptionist heard that his family did not lack money, so he invited him to meet the teacher in charge. Zhang Ling wondered if the center really guaranteed to improve his grades. The teacher confirmed that he would refund the money if the student failed the university entrance exam because the center had a team of 5 test makers with a success rate of up to 80%. However, to participate in this special class, he had to pay 300,000 yuan. When leaving, Jian Ling happened to meet Qi Song. He said that his sister had signed him up for extra classes here and had made great progress thanks to the teacher who made questions that were very standard with the school. During the evening exam, Qi Song accidentally dropped a small iron bar on the ground. Jian Ling picked it up, but this action caused Qi Song to have a sharp pain in his ear. He quickly ran outside and used the iron bar to suck out the device in his ear. Jian Ling questioned whether the device was used to listen to the answers. Qi Song was forced to confess that the center had given him wireless headphones before the exam, that they would transmit the answers in the last 30 minutes, and that he had heard that the center was expanding its network to all the exam sites in the city. An suspected that there were other people in the school involved, but it was clear that she and Jian Ling could hardly interfere. The college entrance exam was coming up, and they needed to focus on studying well. Although Jian Ling had kept An out of danger, he still secretly investigated and guessed that Gu Ming was in charge of the exam sites at their school. However, to do this he needed to find a strong enough transmission point to cover as many exam sites as possible. In the last class, Lu Yaru understood the students' nervousness, but she believed that as long as everyone tried their best, they would do well. She instructed them to adjust their moods in the last 2 days to face the exam, and made an appointment to see everyone again on June 7th. After that, she recorded the students' situation in a document. An stood in the hallway, expressing that she couldn't bear to leave this place, and asked Jian Ling if he had anything to say to her. However, he only wished her good luck on her exams. An felt disappointed because today might be the last time they saw each other, while Jian Ling thought that the most important thing was that An safely passed the college entrance exam. She turned to him and asked if he would still appear in her life in the future. Jian Ling thought he would write down all his experiences in the past into his novel, and promised that when he finished writing, he would personally deliver it to An-jen. In 2024, John Ling read his 2012 novel manuscript and immediately remembered the incident of cheating on the exam. At that moment, Gu Ming called to ask if he had recovered his memory. John Ling from the future immediately questioned him about what happened on June 6, 2012, and whether An-jen was still alive. Gu Ming thought his old friend had not remembered, so he arranged to meet him on the rooftop of the Fuxing building. When he met the class president, John Ling from the future immediately urged him to speak frankly. Gu Ming agreed to help him remember everything. It turned out that back then, Gu Ming's mother missed the best treatment period due to lack of money, and the disease later turned into late-stage pancreatic cancer. Gu Ming's father disappeared, and the hospital bills piled up one after another. He couldn't allow himself to be useless, so he did everything. On the day of collecting the milk money, Gu Ming deliberately helped An-jen back to class, and while she was sleeping, he took the milk money and hid it in a trash can in a place where few people passed by. He didn't expect that this action would push An-jen to the brink of death, so he had to return the money and find another way. Later, Gu Ming received an invitation from the training center and was forced to accept it to earn money. At that moment, the doctor announced that he needed to prepare 1 million yuan for the surgery. Gu Ming knew that he couldn't turn back, so he asked the center to expand the signal range. Yingxing calculated carefully and discovered that the Fuxing building could cover all the exam sites in the city. Gu Ming decided to stand on the rooftop and send the college entrance exam answers to all the students who were willing to pay. But he didn't expect John Ling to find out so quickly. Gu Ming did not expect An-jen to follow Jian Ling here. The class president begged Jian Ling to let him earn money to save his mother. Jian Ling knew that Gu Ming's mother was seriously ill and promised to find a way to help, but Gu Ming thought that no one could help him. At this moment, An-jen arrived and questioned what the two were talking about. Jian Ling had no choice but to reveal that Gu Ming was passing the college entrance exam answers to other students, and Jen begged him to stop and promised that her parents would help Gu Ming's family, but he thought that no one could save his family. Furthermore, he admitted that he had stolen the milk money. An-jen tried to convince Gu Ming that if he cheated, he would commit a crime and his life would be ruined. However, Gu Ming thought that his life was already ruined, with a gambling father and a dying mother on a hospital bed. Then he turned around and was about to jump off the building. An-jen rushed to pull Gu Ming back, but she lost her balance and fell. Jian Ling didn't have time to grab An-jen's hand, and he watched her leave him forever. At this moment, Gu Ming coldly congratulated Jian Ling for having to rely on his best friend to become the most famous writer in the city. Jian Ling didn't believe it because he hadn't finished writing any work yet. Gu Ming suddenly took out his phone, and Jian Ling suddenly fell into a strange space. He saw An-jen waiting for him to save her. Jian Ling quickly grabbed her hand. This time he wouldn't let her leave him again. It turned out that in reality, Jian Ling was originally a famous writer and had witnessed An-jen's accident with his own eyes. He collected the novel manuscript on the street, written by An-jen herself, about a beautiful yet cruel youth story. Jian Ling felt that every word was very real, just like the author's own life. However, the novel ends in the end of the world, and time will be reversed. When Jian Ling went to the publishing house, he asked the director to print this special novel, a story that clearly analyzed the psychology of a high school girl. However, the director thought that today's readers no longer like cold stories. He knew that the author had personally experienced the feeling of her parents' divorce and school violence, and even spent the rest of her life healing from that past. However, instead of choosing revenge, she let herself receive a tragic ending when she fell from a high place. Jian Ling said that she had just had an accident. When he went to the hospital to visit An-jen, he heard the doctor say that she was in a vegetative state and that it was difficult for the patient to wake up unless she had a strong desire to live. At that moment, Jian Ling had an idea, which was to rewrite a different ending for An-jen. He created a new character and first met her under the praying tree. An-jen felt normal until he transferred to her class, and he had the same name as the man who called last night. Gradually, they became close friends and confided in each other everything. Therefore, Jiang Ling always appeared when An-jen needed him most and even saved her from death. However, that ending still could not wake An-jen up. Dr. Liu believed that most comatose patients do not accept information from the outside. However, Jian Ling did not want to give up. He continued to write, hoping that An-jen's inner self could be awakened. Since then, An-jen has experienced countless sweet moments with Jian Ling. In addition to love, she also gradually resolved misunderstandings with her friends and spent her brilliant youth with them. But the villain who manipulated everything was Gu Ming. An-jen fell down to save him. Jian Ling ran quickly and grabbed her hand. Suddenly, Suddenly, the alarm sounded, and Anjen miraculously woke up. She looked over to the side of the hospital bed and saw a youth novel. Dr. Lu said that a friend wanted to give the book to Anjen. She remembered that the director of the publishing house had rejected her manuscript because it was too dark, making her sad and throwing the entire manuscript into the sky. At that moment, a car had passed by and had hit Anjen. After being discharged from the hospital, she kept reading the novel and was touched that Jianling always believed in her and was by her side. She began to wonder who Jianling was in the real world. Early the next morning, Anjen went to school and suddenly saw a figure exactly like the one in her dream. However, she did not know if the story and those characters really existed. While walking in a daze, Anjen happened to see a familiar figure. In front of her was a young man releasing birds into the sky, his other hand tightly holding an ancient book. Anjen recognized that it was Jianling from the novel, and also the person who saved her real world. He took the initiative to greet her first. The two looked at each other and smiled. This is the entire content of the movie. Thank you everyone for watching, goodbye, and see you again.